The human spirit is unconquerable. We are individuals and we are sovereign, born with unlimited potential, gifted from our Creator. Our mission is to break free from the systems that bind us.
I volunteer as tribute.
We strive for peace and prosperity and overcome all challenges, roadblocks, and obstacles. We are empowered because we think for ourselves and we act for ourselves. We are self-reliant and independent, but guided by the wisdom of those who share our values.
What possible difference can I make?
There is no government, no ruler, nor ideas that are able to stop us. We are driven to succeed because we seek political freedom, financial freedom, and spiritual freedom.
It's all for nothing if you don't have freedom.
This is Mike Corbell, and you are listening to The Invictus Mind. Tommy, I appreciate you taking time off your day to chat with me a little bit. Like I just mentioned, you have been my most frequent guest, and I guess I can call you a friend by now because not only do we share a lot in common in the podcast world, but probably much of our political philosophy and outlook in life will correlate as well.
Yeah, there's got to be a lot of overlap there. I found that there is an issue, not with you, but with other people, dealing with people like me, and people of my ilk, people that have similar backgrounds to me. So it's really nice to find like-minded people that don't judge us based upon the rough edges that we put out there.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe this, Tommy, but back in the heyday, I had dyed black hair down to my neck and never got any tattoos or anything. I got a little bit of facial hair only because my wife allowed me to have a goatee. She said that if I grew a beard out, she would no longer kiss me. So I had to make a judgment call there.
My wife keeps telling me if I ever shave my beard, she'll divorce me.
Anyway, it's been about 6 months since you and I chatted, and the world keeps shifting, I think, faster than we can keep up with it.
Yeah, it feels like a lot longer than that.
So 2020 is over. I think that you and I can both appreciate that, and we're on to new and better things in 2021. I hope not repeat the same year, but let's just start there. I mean, what's your outlook for 2021? What are your prospects looking like this year?
I'm really focused on Agoraism. Focused on myself, focused on the podcast, focused on writing. I'm trying not to get too emotionally caught up in all the hustle and bustle of things going on around me. I have a tendency to let these things bother me a lot and take them very personally because I do have kids and a grandchild. So it's one of those things where the reason I do what I do is for them. And I figure that my best bet at making a better life for them in the future is to focus on myself and the things that I can control in my life.
I think you touched a key point there, is the things that we can't control. I fall victim to this mentality of, watching too much news, too much media, concerned about the coronavirus, concerned about the election, concerned about I'm doing air quotes here, the insurrection on the Capitol, and all that stuff. Really, to me, yeah, it's political theater, and much of it to me is just nonsense. But will it have an impact on my family's future? Yeah, in some way, I imagine, but I think that I'm more in control of that than anything that I see in the news.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm trying to just stay centered and focused on the things I can that I can control. There's already enough things out of our control that affect us on a daily basis without worrying about those things that are not directly impacting us at the exact moment. And if we can manage to get through the jungle of the personal issues we have and whatever bad habits we have and the obstacles we put in our own way, it's going to make it a lot easier in the future to navigate the rough terrain that is ahead of us.
Mm-hmm. I've been listening to your podcasts a little bit more frequently. The Year Zero podcast, I like that. And you mentioned that you started writing more. So now you have a Substack account.
I do. It's tommysalmons.substack.com.
What was it that prompted you to start that account?
I've always loved writing. Writing's really my first love, and not political writing. It was always fiction. I was always into horror and kind of taking what I saw around me as the cultural aspects of a life and letting it influence my horror and kind of shaping my fiction around my opinions of what I saw and doing it in more of a symbolic way. And so that was always my first love. I've been writing since I was 13 years old. Started off with poetry, and I just wanted that outlet again. I wanted something with that outlet, and I have a fairly, decent fan base for my podcast. So I figured I'd let them into some of my other adventures and some of my other outlets that I work on and that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. There's only so much you can say on a podcast that maybe you forget or forego rather in your writing, or vice versa. And I think
well, and if you're reading what I'm writing, you don't have to deal with the fact that I'm thinking as I'm talking. So you don't have to listen to me stumble all over myself searching for a word, because I did that long before you get to see it.
I started a Substack account myself. I'm actually, I challenged myself. Well, rather, it was a challenge that another podcaster put forth to me. But I'm doing a published 365 challenge. So I'm making it a personal goal to put out something every single day of 2021, whether it's something I've written, something I've recorded, or I've got some other little media things that I've been doing. So I think that you're on track to that. And, you've inspired me with writing stuff. And so I started a Substack account too.
Oh, I'm glad I can be an inspiration.
Well, come on, Tommy, you are an influencer. You got a podcast. You got to inspire somebody.
Yeah, no, I just don't look at myself that way. I really don't. The way I do my podcast is I like to have conversations with people, and I kind of look at the audience as my peers and not fans. And so when people reference, as fans, or I meet somebody and they're like, "Oh, you're the host of Year Zero," and I'm like, "Yeah, so, like, who cares? Like, I'm just a guy." So
I like that, because with this show, I've been trying to go along that route too, make it more conversational. Although sometimes you have an interview with somebody that's a bigger name, and I don't know about you, but the nerves start racking up a little bit. You're like, okay, I just want to have a casual conversation, but most of the time when you're interviewing something, the conversation has a tendency to go one direction or another, and then you just got to bring it back together and make it more formal, I guess. But I'm not going to do that with you today, Tommy. So this is an interview fashion here.
Yeah, don't let me make you nervous. No, I've interviewed a couple of big names, at least in the groups I travel in, like John Kiriakou. Scott Horton was my first interview ever. Pete Quinones, I've interviewed him quite a few times as well. I have the nerves ahead of time, but once the conversation starts, I relax.
There you go. Very cool. Well, I want to talk a little bit today, Tommy, just about some of the things that you think we should be aware of. Obviously, we started the conversation saying that 2021 is a new year. We kind of want to not pay so much attention to what's going on in Washington. But I was really intrigued by the conversation, your last podcast you had with Michael Harris, the attorney. I've had him on my show before. He's an interesting fellow.
Michael's a really nice guy.
But you were talking a lot about some of this stuff that's all over news now, and this insurrection that took place in D.C. on the 6th.
Yeah.
Were you watching that in real time? Were you just working and heard about it later? How did that come through to you?
Well, I'm on a Slack channel and a Signal channel with a bunch of people that listen to my podcast and other podcasts, and we discuss philosophy and history and politics. And suddenly I just started getting alerts like left and right as I was driving. And I safely checked, see what was going on. and, and I was like, whoa, what the hell is this? So I jumped on Twitter and I started looking around and I was like, wow, this is insanity. And I just kind of followed it in real time. I found a live stream on YouTube so I could listen to it while I was driving to find out what was going on, and was just keeping up with it in that way.
I have friends from all different kinds of backgrounds, and I have your anti-Trump friends, and I have your pro-Trump friends, and then I have, I guess, the more radical of that extreme, the QAnon type of people. And ever since the election in November, I've just been paying attention to everyone's voice as to something's going to happen. And every single time that something in the news happened with Trump challenging the election, it was shot down right away. So I'm looking at my QAnon friends and I'm like, what are you talking about? They kept saying, wait for the next thing, wait for the next thing. I'm like, okay, I'm waiting for it. And it all kind of culminated on the 6th, on that Insurrection Day, as we'll call it. And yeah, it turned out to be like not much of anything for Trump anyway.
No, I heard it. I think it was Bird from Timeline Earth called it the Reichstag fart, which was awesome. So
yeah,
really wasn't much of anything. It was it was funny. I thought it was hilarious. I was enjoying it. It was entertaining, but I was just like, these people don't have a clue what they're doing. They're walking around like tourists taking pictures. And, there were a few of them in there that were, violent and being complete morons. And, a couple of people lost their lives, and that's sad. There was the lady who got shot in the neck, and then there was the cop who got beat over the head with a fire extinguisher, and you hear things like that, and that's sad. I don't like to see that kind of violence, but at the same time, the in totality, it was actually fairly comical.
Yeah, which is why I'm amazed at the hypocrisy that is coming out from the news media talking about insurrection, when we know that back in the summertime, June or July, DC was on fire, right?
Right.
I mean, what was that not an insurrection? How about when they raided the Capitol when Kavanaugh was, put in as a Supreme Court justice?
Yeah, that was out like, and then they had the Women's March in was it June or July of last year, and they shut down the Capitol. But the problem is, and here's the issue, and here's what people I keep running into people that, and I have this tendency too, that we want to point out the hypocrisy, but it's not hypocrisy. You got to realize it's not hypocrisy. The end goal of the left, of the Democratic and the cathedral in itself, the end goal is is power. It's the pursuit of power. It's a very Machiavellian strategy. So they're not concerned with hypocrisy. They'll hold you to your standards when they're weak, but when they're strong, they're going to hold you to their standards. They're not worried about being consistent. That's a libertarian flaw in reality, is being consistent, because consistency means nothing. And it means nothing to people on the right either. So we don't even have to just nail it down to the left. It's just the cathedral. It's just this mindset of the legitimacy of government that allows for the hypocrisy and the inconsistency to be allowed. So I think it was Michael Malice who said pointing out hypocrisy is a blue pill strategy.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about blue pill, because I've been really learning about these different kind of pills. Everybody knows the red pill, right? The red pill, blue pill from the Matrix, right? And they say that when you've been given the red pill, you're awake, you're made aware of what's really going on, perhaps behind the scenes. And the blue pill is, I'm kind of ignorant. I don't really know much, but I think that my opinion matters. But then there's the black pill and the white pill too, right?
Well, don't forget the clear pill.
Now you have to tell me.
The clear pill is the important one.
No, I don't know what the clear pill is. So this
was Curtis Yarvin, and you can find a video on YouTube about the clear pill. But the general concept is, do not allow yourselves to be reeled into these conversations in such a way that you are effectively benefiting any political establishment whatsoever. So be politically useless.
That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
See, I was thinking about the white pill when you said that. So I guess the white pill would be more not giving up, hope runs eternal kind of thing. But if you're talking about the political ideology, then clear pill makes more sense, because that's really what I want to be. I don't want to matter to government. I don't think government should matter to me. And I have this constant conversation with my wife, as she still wants to participate in the electoral process, even on a local level. I'm just like, you know what? I don't want to have anything to do with that.
Right. Yeah. No, I don't blame you. And you're right about the white pill. It's useful to be optimistic. You don't want to get nihilistic. When you get nihilistic, you get what you had at the Capitol building. All hope is gone, and you don't want to lose all hope. I had a white pill moment last week when my 21-year-old or 22-year-old son called me complaining about the politics around him, the political nature of his family, the way that they're judging him. And he's like, I really feel like what you put out there, I agree with you, but I don't know how to verbalize it. I said, son, I've done a lot of studying. This isn't something I just came across, on my own. I've read a lot, yada, yada, yada. So I gave him some books, but the generations that are coming up look at what's going on around us. They understand that this is unsustainable. And I haven't met one of them yet that hasn't in some way, shape, or form identified as a libertarian and wants the government out of their lives, and, you can trace this back to Gamergate and things like that, to where these people were just like, wait, get this authoritarianism away from me.
What's interesting is that you talk about the younger generation, and you look about history back in, back before our time, Tommy, since you and I are about the same age, they didn't have real-time news. They didn't have instant news, on Facebook and on Twitter and everything else like that. So it's easier for us to take a look at history from, reading it. But then, of course, there's always, the perspective of the author in those times. So I think that one of our, I don't know if I want to call it a weakness, it might not be the right word, but one of the things that differentiates us from like our children is that our history has been written, where everyone else in the present, their history is like right now, their history is more present. So, they can see authoritarianism in real time. They can see nonsense in real time, where we have to read about it. And I think the ability to look at the world has shaped ideologies drastically.
Well, this is what is really spreading the red pill mentality in all actuality. I mean, you think about Napoleon, he has that quote where he says history is written by the winners. But now with the 24-hour news cycle, you have, unregulated, uncensored media like podcasts, like what we're doing. We're recording these things in real time. I had Michael Harris tell me the other day that podcasters are the modern day pamphleteers, and I was like, wow, I never looked at it that way. I always kind of considered myself, like pirate radio or something, just some goofball, like spouting opinions. But no, we're recording revisionist history as fast or faster than they're recording their mainstream narratives. Mm-hmm. And so we are literally, as Tom Woods would say, we're literally setting fire to the 3x5 card of allowable opinion faster than they can draft that opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's an important distinction, because a person like you and I we don't really have any kind of agenda. We just want to tell things as we see it.
Right.
So for me, I think that in this world of fake news, where you don't know what the agenda is behind whatever you're reading, even on Facebook and Twitter, I'd rather get my news from podcasters, because they're at least going to be truthful, or at least honest in what they're looking at, and from there we can actually make a distinction.
Well, right. I mean, you can look at what the news around this Capitol assault. It's happened so fast. And what was the first thing that came out? Trump incited the riot. And then the next day they were like, well, Trump was still speaking when the riot started. Oh, okay. So it was the Capitol Police working hand in hand with Trump, and you keep getting this shifting of the narrative. Whenever we're podcasting, we're like, I don't know. There's a history, like I said on my podcast, there's a history of provocateurs and, agent provocateurs. Maybe some of that was going on. I would hate to jump to conclusions before all the facts are out there, but that's not what those with a narrative to spread do. They have an agenda, and they're wearing it on their sleeve, and they're getting desperate because they can't compete with the information as fast as we're putting it out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I like podcasting so much, because you could just like you probably drive your truck all day long, listen to all kinds of different books and perspectives and podcasters and things of
That's
that
what I
nature.
do. That's what I do.
So, well, for me, I've said this before in a podcast, so it's not like I'm trying to hide anything, but one of my part-time gigs is DoorDash. So at
Yeah.
night, after I've worked all day long, I'll just drive around delivering food, but I'll listen to podcasts then. And it's like, okay, I can listen to Michael Malice. I still listen to Jason Stapleton. I can listen to you. I can listen to Tom Woods, Dave Smith, or any other number of people out there. And I'm like, okay, so how is the world laid out based on what Tommy sees? How is the world laid out based on what Pete sees or anything like that? And
Right.
I really like this format. So,
well, and the cool thing is, it's like I was telling you earlier, like I come from more of a street perspective. I was raised extremely poor. We lived in government housing. We lived on oatmeal and peanut butter and jelly for years. That's all we ever ate. I mean, we couldn't afford anything else. I remember one Thanksgiving that we ended up having duck because one of my dad's friends was a hunter that gave us a duck, and that's what we had for Thanksgiving. Like, so whenever I'm coming from the point of view, if you listen to like a Maj Toure or Eric July, I'm kind of like another side of that coin, where we've all come from these really rough backgrounds and lived through some really hard stuff. Whereas some of these podcasters have lived completely upper middle class lives their entire time, and they're more intellectual in the way they express themselves. I'm a little bit more straightforward. I'm a blue collar guy. I'm just going to be straight with you. That's just the way I come at it,
Yeah, I think that's why you and I relate a lot. It's because I was raised in a blue collar family. I was a heating and air conditioning guy for a while, so like I'd never put a collar shirt on except for blue collar, right?
Right.
And now I go out there and I try to be a professional. It's just my life changed, but I understand that being in a lower middle class. I mean, right now I live in a suburbs of Chicago, but it's not the the wealthiest of all neighborhoods. I mean,
and I wasn't saying you per se. I'm just saying there's room for all of it. And that's where you get a lot of this libertarian infighting, is people don't understand the perspective when like a Maj Toure says something, and I won't repeat what he said, but he's getting all kinds of flack because he said something crude to somebody. Well, I don't know, if I jump off of Twitter for an hour and then I jump back on and I'm getting dogpiled by 20 different people, I'll probably say some crude stuff too. I mean,
right.
I just know how my personality is. And instead of like, well, y'all aren't being intellectual, y'all are attacking me. So, whatever, go pound sand, man. I ain't got time for you,
I find that maybe I'm just aging myself here, or my ineptitude of social media is that whenever like you have a social media debate on Facebook or something like that, it's always the first person who can find whatever source they want to put on Facebook as, oh, I'm the first, I'm correct on this issue, therefore I won the discussion because I found something on social media faster than you did. And I'm just wondering if half these people even have a life. They just have all this junk that they see that they can post on Facebook right away and try to prove you wrong. It's like, really? Okay, that's kind of odd.
No, they don't. And it's gotten worse since the COVID lockdowns, and it's because they don't have a life anymore. The government's not allowing, a lot of state governments aren't allowing people to have a life anymore right now. I mean, here in Texas, I don't have that problem. Driving a truck, I was never shut down. I was working the entire time. But there's a lot of these places, these people don't have lives. Their entire lives have been, turned upside down. They've lost everything. And so they have nothing else. And they're living in this fantasy world. They're living in this subjective reality, and they're losing human connection, and they're losing the ability to relate to people on a one-on-one, objective reality, one-on-one. They're not doing anything productive. They're not building anything. They're not growing any food. They're not doing anything that's helping them in life. All they're doing is they're playing online, eating junk food and drinking wine all day. And so, it's like, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a bunch of, obsessive compulsive people on social media wanting to be right,
Yeah. And I think none of them are right. So
probably not. I mean, that's the one thing that with the amount of information that we can find nowadays, and as fast as information flows, it is getting harder and harder to determine what is correct. And so it's not, and it seems to, and it plays right into the hands of the governing authority, that the more that you and I are at odds with each other and at each other's throat and arguing with each other, the less likely we are to hold those in power accountable.
That's them shoving the blue pill down our throat when we want to eat the red pill, right?
trying to
So-
and listening to them at all, listening to any of those voices coming out of the cathedral, whether it's academia, media, the corporate press, politics, is going to be a blue pill experience for anybody. I listen to some of these people and I'm just like, I don't even understand you anymore. Like, you're not even speaking like a human as far as I'm concerned.
You know, what's interesting though is that even though there is a bunch of noise from every direction, they're making the cathedral is making a concerted effort to force a narrative down everyone's throat, or eliminate, is more real what's going on, eliminate the alternative voice out there. What do you think about this censorship stuff that's going on? Because there's a lot of people who think one way and there's a lot of people who think another way, and I'm just interested in your perspective.
I think they're in their death throes. I think they realize there's nothing they can do. I saw an article on Forbes. Excuse me, I'm just going to lean over, but I'm still right here. I saw they were talking all the on
Tommy, I lost you. I can't hear you anymore.
Am I back? What happened?
There you go.
Okay, sorry. I noticed my computer battery was getting a little low, so I just charging it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So no, this article on Forbes was complaining that all these people that are getting kicked off of Facebook and Twitter are going to alternate sources, and they're creating these underground networks on like Signal and Telegram and Slack and Mayway or MeWe, however you want to pronounce it. And it's like, well, what did you expect? They were just going to shut up? You expected these people, they have opinions and they want to be heard. You expected them just to shut up? Well, you can't speak on Twitter and Facebook. You no longer exist anymore. Alex Jones is bigger than he's ever been. He hasn't been on Facebook and Twitter in 2 years. Like he's, you just drew attention to these people, so I don't know what they expected, but I think they're in their death throes. I think they realize there's no way they can control the narrative. And then with Trump on the way out, they have to find some way of remaining relevant, because that's all they've had to talk about for 4 years. You can go look back in 2014, 2013, there were articles about how CNN was on the verge of bankruptcy, how the mainstream media was dying. And then Trump, came into office and he was great for their ratings. Now Trump's on their way out. They're trying to paint all his supporters or anybody who doesn't think inside the mainstream narrative into this corner, as if they can control what we think. But we'll just go somewhere else and we'll continue doing whatever we're doing. And there's no way they can stop us. There's no way they can compete with us. So yeah, I think they're in their death throes.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I was having a conversation with one of my business partners, and I was like, why would a big company like Twitter or Facebook, why would they purposefully try to shut out half of their audience? It seems like that would not make sense from a business perspective, because they're going to lose market share.
But it's not about business; it's about power.
Well, right, power. Exactly.
Yeah, they're in bed with government. They're an arm of the government. You can go look at In-Q-Tel and the amount of money that the CIA and NSA funnels to Twitter. It's just a state contractor now. They're not a private company. I don't care what anybody says. All right. And yeah, it doesn't matter. They don't care about the money. They can get the money. The government will print the money and give it to them. They don't care. They don't care about the money. They'll lose it. I saw yesterday, it was like between Twitter and Facebook in the last, I think it was like something like the last 4 months, Twitter and Facebook have lost $51.2 billion in market share. They don't care. It's about power, because their power's just getting, those two companies on the track that we were on in 2019, in 2000 and 2020, those two companies were more powerful than the federal government, period. All three branches of the government combined. There was, the only thing that kept the federal government in charge was the military, right? And the monopoly on violence. But those two companies were completely more powerful as far as their influence on culture and on American society. And so they don't care so much about the money. With power, the money will come. They're interested in shutting down all the alternative voices so that they have monopolized that power.
Yeah, I think that Facebook has 2.1 billion subscribers or something like that, which makes it the biggest country, if it were, on the planet. You know, bigger than China and India combined.
Right.
And my thought is, like, I just talked about market share, but I mean, I wonder how many people are actually going to stop using Facebook because, you know, a couple influencers were banned, even though those influencers will bring their audience to other places. How much of an impact is that really going to make in the long run anyway?
I don't know. You got to kind of look at the all right. So this is like a technological version of Standard Oil, right? So remember what Standard Oil did to try to monopolize the market is they cut their prices, undercutting all their competition. Same thing Amazon did whenever Amazon was building up, right? They cut they didn't take in any profits for 10, 15 years. They weren't profiting at all. Everything was being pushed back out into investment. That's all that Twitter and Facebook are doing right now. They're just trying to undercut everybody. They're just trying to get that power and control. Once they get that power and control, that market share is going to catch back up. They care less about that. This is a long game. This isn't about today's profits.
So what do you think the long-term perspectives are? Are we going to have more decentralized communication everywhere, or is it just, you know, a year from now, 2 years from now, when Trump's kind of just like in a history book and he's not on front page news everywhere, are we going to go back to normal, or is this going forward that we're just going to have decentralized communication?
I think expecting anything to be normal ever again is kind of like expecting it to go back to the way it was prior to 9/11. It's not going to happen. That the government is going to continue to try to garner as much control. They're going to use their corporate cartels in as far as they can in gathering that control. I mean, the biggest military contractors that we see today are people like Google and Microsoft. I think Microsoft has something like 5,000 contracts, defense contracts with the State Department. I mean, this is normal. That's what it is. It's accelerating, and the reason it's accelerating is because technology is evolving at such an accelerated speed, and the human mind can't evolve.
I lost you again, Tommy. I don't hear anything.
Oh no.
Okay, I hear you now. Sorry to interrupt your good rant there, but
no, that's okay. I think maybe, like I said, I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I might be losing connection. I might just be having a little trouble connection.
That's all right.
Anyway, no, I was saying that the technology evolves so fast that it's accelerating everything, and that the human mind, the human perspective, we don't, as people, we don't evolve that fast, that quickly. We're not even comfortable with the internet of the 90s. Like our system of society hasn't even evolved to that point. Like it's beyond anything we're ever going to be able to keep up with. But what I think we're going to see happen is those geniuses, like the ones who developed cryptocurrency, are going to start developing blockchain communications networks in which you can't be traced. Everything's anonymous. Everyone's anonymous, and everything's done, you know, through through passwords that are put back in hash that you can't, you know, recover, and, you know, kind of like Steam It, Steam It tried that. Unfortunately, I did lose my password, so I can't get back on there again. But but I think it's going to be that kind of a thing where you're not able to, where it's going to be just complete cryptography in the communication network. And that's where blockchain technology is going to lead us, and it's going to allow us. And you'll see, Gab created their own servers, their own network. You're going to see companies doing that in order to fight the censorship. And, you can just go to Gab, sign on to Gab. And if you want their app, you just save their app to your home screen from their website instead of going to the Apple Store or Google Store. So it's going to be, completely decentralized. They're just going to lose all control because everybody's just going to go, all right, I'll find another way of doing it.
So that leads me to the next point I was going to make, because you started saying that you're engaging in agorism. And I know I don't want to talk about somebody else on our podcast, but I've watched the revolution, I guess, or if you would, the evolution of Peter Quinones. I'm using him as an example here. When he wanted to, abandon everything in a system, he was kind of speaking more from a black pill perspective. All is lost in the government, and then he has this evolution where he's like, I think I should be involved in, participating in the fight. But when you talk about technocracy and a technocratic state, that's why I'm still kind of holding on to this agorism mentality, because I can't keep up with all the technology that's going out there. And I know that government is losing control. So, why be involved in that thing? So, from my perspective, I just want to live a simple life and, be an influencer in my own right. Is that Konkin? How to opt out of the tech?
Derek Bros.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I can't. There's a glare. I can't see the author.
Oh, yeah. How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State by Derek Bros.
Yeah, so I've been listening to him and John Bush. I don't know if you probably know his partner, John Bush. They're pretty good people.
You hear me now?
Yeah. We'll probably wrap this up pretty soon, because I don't know how it's going to go. But
yeah, I think it may be these old earphones, man. These things are old, so that might be what it is.
Yeah, I hear you good now.
All right. Yeah, no, I interviewed John at the beginning of 2020. I did an interview with him. Yeah.
So that's why I'm taking this new perspective in 2021. Whether you call it agorist or not, I actually, in financial services, we've had this conversation before, Tommy. There was a lot of regulation in financial services and a lot of red tape that you got to go through. And I abandoned most of that stuff. I mean, I still have a couple of my licenses, but I don't want to be on any kind of government record or any kind of compliance regulation or anything like that. So for me now, the influence is just about, okay, what's out there? What should people be aware of? What can they do to find some kind of peace, some kind of prosperity? And, agorism seems to be a logical step for most people.
All right. Yeah. And people got to realize there's nothing more American than agorism. All right. So for the people that don't know what agorism is, it is not an ideology. It is a strategy. Agorism is a strategy of using the counter economy, the gray and black markets, in order to undercut the government authority through peaceful means. It is basically a financial revolution. Okay, so anything from community gardening to your shade tree mechanic to your drug dealer are all agorists in some way, shape, or form. And I was talking to a guy yesterday, a brilliant guy I'll be having on my show next week. And he was telling me that this is that agorism, you can trace it directly back to the founding of the United States, to prior to the Constitution. And it was the privateers and the pirates that were funding the colonies fight against the British. These were people that were working in the underground. These were people that were working outside of the tax system and outside of government reach. And that's all agorists are saying. Have your own garden, grow your own food. You're undercutting Monsanto when you're doing that, right? Use cryptocurrency or barter. You're undercutting the Federal Reserve when you're doing that. These types of things are just a strategy. If you know a guy who lives next door to you who's a plumber, hire him to come do your plumbing at your house. Pay him in cash. Tell him not to claim it on his taxes. We all have these these people in our communities, in our lives, that we can use in this way, in which maybe you're helping somebody who's impoverished or was laid off here the last year because of all the lockdowns. Maybe you're just giving somebody a hand, putting $500 in their pockets for a service rendered, whether it's working on your car or whatever it is. But we're talking about, that's what agorism is. It's just this using the resources around you outside of the scope of government, not allowing the government to involve themselves in your financial transactions, in your economic transactions. And that's basically all it is.
Yeah, I think a lot of people engage in that too without even realizing what it is. And so
Absolutely.
This term is a new term for a lot of listeners, I suppose, but they all know what it is. I mean, I practiced agorism the other day when my car needed about $1,000 worth of repairs, but my next door neighbor has a full garage, right there, and all the tools that I don't have. So right. I'm like, I saved a lot of money, and he's like, don't pay me. I'm like, well, I got to give you something, man, a bottle of wine or something, but hey, he just he helped me out, and I didn't have to go to any I didn't have to use any kind of certified technician or anything like that. So
right, exactly. And I think people get a little intimidated when they hear new words like agorism, and that's why I felt like it necessary to explain it, because don't be intimidated by it. This is something we've all been participating in our entire lives, So I mean, I built an addition on to my grandpa's. He had a 14 by 80 trailer. I did a 10 by 80 deck on the front and a 16 by 80 addition on the back. And he paid me all cash money to do the whole thing. It was all agorism. I didn't even know what agorism was. And I'm like, hey,
Right. Under the table, I think people understand that, right? To give you cash under the table. So that's agorism.
Cash in hand.
There you go. Very cool. Well, Tommy, you're looking good. It sounds like you're working. You're being one of the essential employees out there, which how bogus that is, right?
You're all essential in my book.
There you go. So, anything big on the horizon? You just keep doing what you're doing. What's going on for your immediate future? I
got a really interesting series popping up with a guy I just met. A former guest of mine introduced me to a guy, and he's really into philosophy and Greek history. And so we're going to do a series tying in how philosophy transitions to ideology, and how ideology essentially kills nations. So that's going to be interesting. I have no idea how many episodes it's going to be, but we're going to do one a month until we're done.
That's going to be on your podcast?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, cool. We'll air the first one next week. So
awesome. I'll have to check that out for sure. I was told when I started this that you just keep publishing, something's bound to happen. So good luck for you.
I'm at 100 and I think I'm at 147 next week.
Okay. And you're still consistently putting them out every week?
I take a week off every once in a while, but the reason I do that is because sometimes my life is just insane out here on the road and there's nothing I can do. And then I have weeks like this where I record 3 episodes in a week. So
awesome.
Which makes it even crazier.
Well, good for you. Good for you. Well, Tommy, like I said, I wanted to keep it brief, but just kind of touch base. I appreciate these conversations we're having. It's just, two guys who are trying to make it through the world, just trying to find some way of connecting and building networks. I think that's probably the most important thing. Is I tell my wife that if all hell does break loose, I got a couple people in Texas that I know pretty well. So I'll be pounding on your door. Tommy, let me in. No, I'm just kidding.
No, that's all right. I got room. We might have to build you a little. Might have to build you a cabin, and but we'll figure something out. I got trees on my property. We can cut them down.
Well, what's funny is that, so I live in Illinois, and there's a lot of damn people here in this state, but there is a lot of open ground. And I don't know where I heard it somewhere that the size that Texas is, you can fit every single living person in Texas and still not be considered overpopulated. So, there's probably a lot of places out there.
There's a lot of room in Texas. I know we have 8 and 3/4 acres. down in the middle of the swamp. So got ourselves a stocked pond and, wildlife that likes to run across our property. Every once in a while we get hogs on the property. So we're not going to starve, if nothing, so we grow some vegetables and some stuff like that. And I think I'm going to get some goats and some chickens this year. So
I wanted a goat just because, not because I know how to raise a goat or anything like that, but I just
because they're
think
delicious. They're delicious.
That too.
I had a goat korma. I had a goat korma for the first time last year, and I'm obsessed with goat. I'm like, I want a bunch of goats because they are delicious.
All right. Very cool. Very cool. All right, man. Well, like I said, I appreciate the conversation. It was short and sweet, but just wanted to check in with you, see how things are going, and I'm looking forward to checking out your podcast a little bit more. Why don't you give it a shout out one more time so people know what it is?
Yeah, that's year zero. You can find me at the libertarianinstitute.org /year zero, or you can find it. It goes up on my Substack too, tommysalmons.substack.com. So either way, give me a shout out, give me a listen, tell me how wrong I am, and I'll definitely make the appropriate adjustments as needed.
All right, very cool. Well, you have a great day, sir. It looks like you got sun outside anyway. I'm seeing behind you a little shade right there in the truck.
It's a fairly nice day today, actually. It was cold yesterday, but it's really nice today. So
cool. All right, man. We'll catch you on whenever we catch you, I guess, and you take care, all right?
All right, brother. It was fun. I'm sorry about the sound issues.
Hey, don't worry about it. All right, later.
Bye.